Welcome to the Marketing Behind Rapid Growth, the podcast where we explore the strategies, decisions, and growth engines behind some of the world's most successful technology companies. Today, we're talking about Deel. Picture a pitch meeting in early 2019. Two MIT-educated founders walk into Y Combinator with an idea. Not a social app, not a productivity tool. Payroll. International payroll, to be exact. A category most investors in that room would have described, politely, as boring. At worst, a regulatory swamp owned by decades-old incumbents and armies of local consultants. Alex Boaziz and Shuo Wang did not see it that way. They had tried to hire talent across borders before, in earlier ventures, and it had nearly broken them. What everyone else saw as unsexy, they saw as the single biggest bottleneck standing between the world and a truly global workforce. That reframe from nuisance to opportunity is where this story begins. 7 years later, the numbers are hard to ignore. Deel generates more than $1.4 billion in annual recurring revenue. It serves over 40,000 customers in more than 150 countries. Its most recent funding round valued the company at $17.3 billion. And here's the detail that should really catch your attention. Deel has been profitable since 2023. In an era when hyper-growth software companies have trained investors to expect years of losses in exchange for scale, Deel did both. It scaled, and it made money doing it. This is not simply a product-market fit story. It is a study in what we might call strategic compression, the art of collapsing timelines that used to take entire industries decades to walk through. Let's start with the product, because the marketing story only makes sense once you understand the problem underneath it. Before Deel existed, a company that wanted to hire someone in another country had exactly 3 options, and none of them were good. Option 1, set up a local legal entity. That could take a year or more and cost tens of thousands of dollars just to hire a single employee. Option 2, offshore the work through a legacy staffing agency. Expensive, slow, and detached from the company's own culture and systems. Option 3, just pay a contractor directly, informally, and hope the compliance risk never catches up with you. Deel's first version of the product was scrappy. It focused narrowly on moving money across borders to contractors, but the real insight came later, during Y Combinator itself, after the founders talked to hundreds of other startup teams. The hard part was never sending money. Wiring a payment to a developer in Sweden is a solved problem. The hard part was everything around that payment. Was the contract locally compliant? Was the tax documentation correct? Who actually owned the intellectual property that contractor produced? So Deel pivoted, not from one payments feature to another, but from a payments company into a compliance engine. Think of it as building a Gusto for international contractors. Compliant contract templates layered on top of a global payment rail. Compliance essentially turned into code. That single pivot let companies hire across borders in days instead of months. And it set up everything that came next. Because once customers started using Deel to hire contractors, their needs evolved. A company with 3 contractors in Brazil didn't want 3 contractors anymore. They wanted 3 full-time employees. And that is a completely different legal problem. This is where Deel made its most consequential strategic bet. In 2020, it launched its employer of record service. Through this model, Deel actually owns local legal entities around the world and legally employs workers on behalf of its clients, handling their benefits, payroll, and taxes directly. Now, most competitors in this space, including a company like Papaya Global, took a shortcut here. They partnered with a patchwork of local providers in each country, rather than owning that infrastructure themselves. Deel went the harder route. It built out what was internally described as a 5-person Navy SEAL team, moving country to country, incorporating legal entities at speed, on the ground, one jurisdiction at a time. Why does this matter so much? Because owning the entity, instead of renting access to one through a partner, changes the entire economics of the business. It means higher margins. It means tighter control over the customer experience. And it means a regulatory moat that is genuinely difficult for a newcomer to replicate, because you cannot shortcut the process of legally establishing a company in dozens of countries. From there, the product stack kept expanding outward. Global payroll for companies with their own entities. IT equipment management, immigration services, Deel stopped being a payroll tool and started positioning itself as something much bigger, the operating system for the global workforce, covering everything from the moment someone is hired to the moment they retire. That is the infrastructure story. Now let's talk about the marketing engine that turned that infrastructure into a category-defining brand. Payroll and compliance are what you might call high-stakes, low-glamour purchases. Nobody at a company gets promoted for picking the safe payroll vendor, but plenty of people have been fired over a misclassification penalty that cost their company millions. In categories like this, trust is the entire currency. And Deel understood that trust in the digital age is built through authority. So Deel launched an aggressive content strategy. Not content chasing broad, competitive keywords that everyone else was already fighting over, but hundreds of pages targeting very specific, high-intent questions. Things like tax deductions for independent contractors, or the exact labor law requirements in Sweden. These are not glamorous search terms, but think about who is actually typing them into a search bar. It is an HR manager or a founder at the exact moment they need an answer, and they are one click away from becoming a customer. The boldest move in this strategy was something most marketers would have dismissed outright: a remote work glossary. Glossaries have a reputation in SEO circles as a low-effort, low-reward tactic. Thin content, padded out for search engines that nobody actually reads. Deel did the opposite. It built a glossary that was genuinely comprehensive, defining thousands of industry terms with real professional precision. The result was a resource that came to rank for tens of thousands of search queries, driving organic traffic that rivaled the company's main blog. But the real value of that glossary was never really about the traffic. It was about positioning. Every time someone landed on a Deel page to understand an obscure term in labor law, Deel was quietly cementing itself as the authority in a field that most people found impossibly complex. That was phase one of the marketing story: authority. Earn the trust of the specific, technical buyer through genuine expertise. Phase two was something different. As Deel moved beyond startups and into enterprise accounts, it found itself competing directly with legacy giants like ADP, companies with decades of institutional trust behind them. Authority alone was not going to be enough. Deel needed something you might call aura, the kind of brand recognition that makes a company feel inevitable before a single sales conversation even happens. You can see that ambition most clearly in Deel's move into global sport. In late 2025, Deel became Arsenal's official HR platform partner. Starting in the 2026-27 season, the Deel name will appear on the club's shirt sleeves, visible to hundreds of millions of viewers around the world. That is not really about football fans becoming payroll customers. It is a signal. It tells a Fortune 500 procurement team, an airline, a retailer, an energy company, that Deel operates at a scale and level of reliability worthy of one of the most recognized shirts in world sport. That kind of brand aura lowers friction before a salesperson ever walks through the door. Now let's talk about how Deel used capital, because this is where the growth story gets genuinely unconventional. By early 2026, Deel had completed more than 10 acquisitions, but the way it approached those acquisitions broke from standard SaaS playbook entirely. The typical approach goes like this: acquire a product, spend a year quietly rebuilding it on your own back end, and only then, once everything is stable, turn your sales team loose on it. Deel flipped that sequence entirely. When Deel acquires a company, the front end of that product gets integrated into the Deel platform almost immediately, still running on its original back end. The go-to-market team gets trained on the live product within the first few months. Only after that does the back end get rebuilt, in parallel, while the product is already generating revenue and gaining customers. By the time the back-end rebuild is finished, the sales team has already been selling the product for nearly a year. Alex Boaziz has described this as a little trick, but it is really a form of time arbitrage. It let Deel move into new categories like IT device management and performance reviews faster than competitors could react. So what does all of this add up to? A few lessons stand out. First, own the hardest part of the stack. Deel's decision to own its legal entities rather than lease access through partners was expensive and slow at first, but it built a margin and quality advantage that competitors have struggled to close. Second, treat fundraising as jet fuel, not oxygen. Deel stayed capital efficient in its early days, and when it did raise larger rounds later, it did so from a position of strength and profitability, using that capital to compress time rather than simply to survive. Third, keep revenue close to the product. Co-founder Shuo Wang served as chief revenue officer, and in the earliest days, the founders themselves handled customer support. That kept real, unfiltered friction driving the product roadmap. Fourth, build authority in the long tail. By answering the most specific, technical, unglamorous questions in its field, Deel earned the trust of exactly the buyers who were closest to making a purchase decision. And fifth, make global the default, not a perk. Deel itself operates as a fully remote company, with thousands of employees spread across more than 100 countries. It is hard to build a product for the entire world if your own team only understands one city. As Deel looks ahead, it is already preparing for a workforce reshaped by artificial intelligence. Where some companies worry that AI will shrink the need for hiring, Deel is betting on the opposite. An explosion of new companies and new categories of work, including blended teams that combine human employees with autonomous AI agents. The deeper lesson underneath all of it is this. In a world of rising complexity, the winner is usually not the company with the most features. It is the company that makes the complexity disappear. Deel made hiring someone in Lagos feel as simple as hiring someone in New York, and then wrapped that simplicity in a brand substantial enough to be trusted by the largest companies in the world. It started as a scrappy Y Combinator idea about moving money across borders. Today, as it prepares for a possible public listing, Deel is positioning itself not as a payroll company at all, but as infrastructure for the future of work itself. This was the marketing behind rapid growth. See you in the next episode.